Coming up on Tech News today, what's wrong with Facebook's earnings? Nothing, or maybe something. Also, they're going to make a phone? Apple buys Samsung's security. We'll explain what that means, but it's true. And the truth about Google Fiber and its television service. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, July 27th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your iPhone, iPad, MacBook, or Android smartphones from your home or office. Find out what your gadget is worth at Gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world and put them in context for you. We'll start with the top 10 stories of the day in the news feeds. The fight between Samsung and Apple may have moved to a different front. Mobile security company Authentic just signed a deal with Samsung to tighten things up a bit on the mobile handset maker's Android devices. So Apple is buying Authentic. Reuters reported the deal as $356 million, $8 per share of Authentic. Apple probably is going to use Authentic to bolster its enterprise-friendly features and offer better security and authentication services to all its customers. No word on what deals it might or might not keep with the likes of Samsung.
Facebook's first earnings report as a public company are out, and revenue has risen to just over $1 billion, up 45% year over year from $731 million last year. But shares fell in early trading due to investor concern over not that fast growth. The big problem, Facebook is adding users faster than it can generate ad revenue, particularly in the mobile space. After a disappointing IPO, Zynga's poor earnings dragging overall revenue down. Now the stock has hit an all-time low. Better luck next quarter.
Yeah, nothing like earning money and then disappointing investors at the same time.
Yeah.
Samsung announced, though, it's loaded. Absolutely
Probably
loaded.
upset. It got really loaded after Apple bought Authentic, huh?
Well, loaded in the monetary sense.
Oh, that kind of loaded.
In its quarterly earnings report, Samsung said its net profit is up 48% compared to last year at the same time, with a profit of $4.5 billion, a record high. Samsung's earnings did not meet analyst expectations, but investors didn't mind, as Samsung's stock rose over 5%. The company's Galaxy line of phones helped Samsung's bottom line, as its television and PC sales were slow like every other company.
But Microsoft isn't making your own tablet going to really piss off all your tablet-making partners. No. Microsoft, don't lie to me. I'm the Securities and Exchange Commission. Okay, maybe. Okay, yes. In an annual report filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission yesterday, Microsoft admitted that, quote, our Surface devices will compete with products made by our OEM partners, which may affect their commitment to our platform. Can't lie to the SEC.
Your SEC voice is kind of off.
Is it?
It's
It's not right. I'll work
pitch.
on it. Okay.
Thank
yeah.
you. Skype has officially responded to accusations that it modified its system in order to provide law officers greater access to its members' conversations. Recently, reports have been flying in the hacker community that Skype infrastructure upgrades to supernodes had centralized user chat information, making it easier to intercept. Skype has now posted a blog post saying that the changes were made only to improve user experience and reliability. Whew. But it also said that it would send messages to law enforcement when appropriate.
Okay.
So it can do it.
Well, there you go. Sometimes.
Just won't, unless it should.
What?
Time for a story. Paul Chambers decided to tweet a message saying, quote, crap, Robinhood Airport is closed. You've got a week and a bit to get your stuff together. Otherwise, I'm blowing the airport sky high, end quote. That tweet got Chambers convicted of violating the UK's Communications Act of 2003 due to its menacing character. Well, that conviction has been overturned, with the court saying that none of Chambers' followers would have found the message to be of menacing character.
A stupid message is not an illegal message.
In the UK.
Is the way I'm interpreting this. Yeah. Robots cost money, people. And this last quarter, Amazon bought a lot of robots. Amazon posted $7 million in net income for the quarter, a year-over-year decrease of 96%. Net sales rose 29% to an increase of $12.83 billion. That figure should have been bigger if it weren't for changes in foreign exchange rates. Stupid euro. Amazon Amazon promises Q3 will be better, except for the projected $50 to $350 million operating loss. But robots, they have robots there.
Oh, they're expensive.
Yeah.
Local search is back, everybody, at least on international Galaxy S3 phones. The feature was removed from the phone recently, ruffled some feathers over there with European users because they're birds. No, I'm just kidding. Samsung has planned to reinstate the feature in a future update, and Android Central now reports that a 5 megabyte OTA update is currently being rolled out that does just that.
You guys like OAuth?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a nice secure way to...
Yeah, best hope for the secure internet,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah, well, you're wrong. The lead author and editor for OAuth does not agree with you. Aaron Hammer-Lahav wrote on his blog post that when compared with OAuth 1.0, the 2.0 specification is more complex, less interoperable, less useful, more incomplete, and most importantly, less secure. He has resigned his role after leading the effort for 5 years.
The UK is not too happy with Google after the company told the UK Information Commissioner that it did not delete all of the personal data it gathered from unsecured wireless networks while mapping things for Street View. Google said it would delete everything by December 2010, but recently contacted the Information Commissioner to say, yeah, we still got some data. The Information Commissioner said it's working with the other European privacy bodies before officially responding.
Let's take a quick break. Thank our sponsor for today's show, Gazelle. Your garage is a gold mine, a simple, easy-to-mine gold mine. Well, at least if you have a bunch of gadgets in there. If you want new gadgets, which we know a lot of you do, you need some money for the upgrade. And now is a great time to sell your old smartphone, your Apple products to Gazelle, and get some cash to trade up. The benefit of using Gazelle is it's simple. You go to the website right now, GAZELLE.com. You tell them what product you've got to sell, and you get an offer. All you got to do is tell them, okay, this is the kind of gadget I have. I've got the 64 gig Wi-Fi with 3G. It's in flawless condition. It doesn't have a ding on it. And then they give you a quote that's good for 30 days. That's why you want to go do it right now. Lock that quote in because it's good for 30 days. And gadgets don't get more valuable over time. They get less valuable over time. So if you want a simple way to get some money out of your old stuff, go to Gazelle.com, put in that information, and get that quote locked in for 30 days. Don't wait because they don't get more valuable, and you'll get your cash free. By the way, you get it, or not free, but fast. They don't charge you for the cash. They send it by PayPal. They'll send it to you by check, and they give you a 5% bonus. So you do get some free cash if you use Amazon. 5% bonus when you use Amazon. Check them out today, Gazelle.com. I've used it to make a nice little tidy pile of cash that I already spent this summer. You can too. Gazelle.com. Thank them for their support of Tech News Today. All right, joining us to dig a little deeper into the stories today, we're very happy to have Leslie Horn, staff writer at Gizmodo. Welcome back to the show, Leslie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Good to have you along. I know you've been following this Facebook story, and so have we. Sarah, we talked about the numbers in the news fuse. What's going on? Doesn't sound good.
Well, it's good and it isn't good. I mean, Facebook hit their revenue mark, the analysts expected, which is $1.18 billion in their first publicly traded quarter. So this is their first earnings report as a public company. But it was a bit of a conservative number to begin with. They really didn't beat it, so they barely made it, and the stock pummeled as a result of that. In fact, it was at an all-time low since they've been a publicly traded company. Ad rev was up quite a bit. It was almost at $1 billion, $992 million, which is 84% of total rev comes from advertising. So advertising is a very big deal to Facebook.
That seems like good news.
It does seem like good news, but it is at a slower growth rate than it was before they IPO'd. So even though upward trajectory is good in general, it says to investors, things seem to be leveling off. Mm-hmm. And if ad rev is that important to Facebook, why aren't they growing anymore? Now, many people say this is kind of easy math. We have more users than ever, but we're not monetizing we're not monetizing those people at the same rate, particularly since so many people have moved to mobile. And Facebook is certainly working on advertising in the mobile space. Sponsored Stories was something that they rolled out earlier this year. For anybody who's not familiar or hasn't seen much of that, it's sponsored stories that show up in your news feed no matter where you are. So if you're on your iPad or you're on your Android device or you're on your computer, you're looking at your news feed, assuming that you do.
So is that similar to promoted tweets and promoted
Kind of.
Foursquare? That's the new thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, sponsored stories is if if I like Coca-Cola, then I'm going to see a Coca-Cola ad pop up in my news feed, but not too much. They say per user, not more than once a day. This is stuff that I've already said that I liked, or people that I've already decided to follow, that sort of thing. So it's supposed to be relevant sponsored information, but not something that I can opt out of, not something that I can click away a particular ad, but I can't say no more Coke in my news feed because I've already said that I have a connection. So that's
it's dependent on what your friends like too.
Right.
It's not just you.
Correct.
So,
You could unlike Coke, but if your friends like Coke, you're going to keep seeing the Coke.
exactly.
yeah.
So it's
I think Twitter's promoted tweets are much more annoying than Facebook, but Facebook's going to get worse.
I think that's the thing, Leslie, is that I don't feel like I see a lot of Facebook ads. And if I'm not seeing them, I'm certainly not clicking on them. And so I don't really think that they're monetizing to their potential. Now, of course, more ads doesn't mean better experience for us, but if I'm not seeing them, then it's as if Facebook really needs to dial it up if they want that advertising revenue to grow in the mobile space.
I think that maybe the story here is that they didn't have a bad welcome to Wall Street, but, because it wasn't what they would like it to be, it might get better for investors, but worse for users, because they're going to be trying to monetize more, and that means more ads, which sucks.
In the earnings call, Mark Zuckerberg was part of that, as was Sheryl Sandberg. Zuckerberg, in response to rumors that Facebook was working on a phone, did not outright deny anything, but did say, really doesn't make a lot of sense for us to do that. He's, of course, reiterating that third-party developers building apps so that people can access Facebook from a variety of devices makes the most sense. We talked about that yesterday. He didn't say they weren't working on it. He didn't say it would never happen. But he
said
did
they
say
aren't building it, but we didn't think Facebook was
he didn't
building
even say
a
that.
phone.
He didn't say that. Well, there have been rumors, what do they call it? Project Buffy from within Facebook, that they were actively working on something, at least a prototype. He just said, basically, we haven't figured out that secret sauce formula. Doesn't mean that they're not working on it.
Yeah, just saying it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, if Mark Zuckerberg thinks that's true, he's the guy who paid $1 billion for Instagram by just showing up somebody's house. It's like, oh yeah, we'll just buy you for that. So if he thinks it's illogical, that's strange. But just because something doesn't seem like it's normal, that doesn't stop Facebook from doing anything. I mean, the amount of changes we've seen to, I guess, people's attitudes for privacy, because Facebook opted you into stuff, and after a term of years, everyone was like, yeah, you know what? I don't mind that being public. So maybe right now it doesn't make any sense to anybody but Facebook in the long run.
And he didn't say no. Doesn't mean HTC's not building a Facebook phone.
That's right. Doesn't mean that they aren't playing around with the idea, for sure.
And if you held him to everything he ever said that Facebook wasn't going to do, Facebook would not be a publicly traded company.
That's right. It's a very good point. He's taking a little page from Steve Jobs there, saying, I'll never do a video iPod. Oh, look, video iPod. Let's talk about Microsoft and their admission that maybe they did rub some OEMs the wrong way.
Yeah, like you were mentioning, Tom, in the news fuse, Microsoft's filed a report with the SEC, saying that their Surface devices may potentially annoy their partners. Also in the filing, Microsoft made mention how mobile devices, quote, may make it more difficult to attract applications developers, end quote, to Microsoft platforms. So they're obviously concerned about not just annoying their partners, but they're also concerned that they might lose developers as well, because there are other devices out there. And over the week, we've seen a couple of Windows 8 stories coming around. There was an analyst from Gartner, Gunnar Berger. He got a lot of press about this. In a word, bad. That was a description of the Windows 8 desktop experience, which he has since retracted, by the way. In an interview with PC Pro, he explained that overall it's a compelling product, but he still thinks that the use of a keyboard and mouse on Windows 8 is a weak spot. And so the thing is Microsoft fooling itself into going to the hardware business, knowing that they're going to annoy their hardware partners, and then potentially losing developers because their operating system may not be the best right now, because they're not just competing in the desktop space or the tablet space, they're competing against mobile phones and every other portable device at this point. Leslie, do you think that Microsoft's believing what they're publicly saying, or are they just doing something else?
I think they're kind of ignoring a big problem, because apps are a huge problem with Windows Phone right now, there aren't any apps, and they can't launch a tablet without any apps. So I think they need to address that problem. That said, I'm really excited about Surface. I'm really excited about Windows 8. I want them to be good, but this is troubling.
Well, it's not like Windows Phone doesn't have any apps, and they have a few really.
They got that Box.net app.
They've got Box.net and Skype, but they just don't have all of the apps that you might want if you're a phone shopper. I think that's the key. What it seems to me like Microsoft is doing here. Remember, this is an SEC report, so they have to sort of be a little negative in case they have a loss. They have to show that they, had a reasonable expectation of this kind of loss happening. So you don't want to overinterpret it to mean that Microsoft doesn't have faith in their products. This is different than a press release, but it does show that they reasonably believe that this could be a problem, and they want to hedge against it. I think the criticism of Microsoft has been that they are trying to hedge their bets too much, that by having the Metro interface and the desktop combined, they're trying to exist in the tablet and the desktop worlds all in one operating system, and maybe that wasn't the best idea. And I think what points that out to me is that we have Windows RT for ARM-based tablets that really isn't Windows 8. In fact, it doesn't even have the same name as Windows 8, but Microsoft has tried to present it as if it's Windows 8. I think they may have made a mistake in trying to force that Metro interface onto Windows 8 and could have done maybe been better by putting out a tablet OS that is at least compatible, that you could take Windows 8 programs and install on. And maybe it's just positioning, but saying this is a tablet OS, so it's going to have a Metro interface. It's going to have different capabilities than Windows 8, and leaving Windows 8 as more of an improvement to Windows 7 without trying to make us use keyboards and tiles. And I think they're running into the same thing with Microsoft Surface, where they're saying, you know what, the OEMs just aren't really doing it for us. Let's show the way, even though we know this is going to annoy them.
It just seems like a case of Microsoft trying to cater to everybody at the same time. Instead of annoying customers and going, look, we're going to go with this on our phones, this on our tablets, and this on your desktop, they try to combine everything. But that unified experience, I'm still thinking, it's just Microsoft explaining how to use their systems. It just doesn't seem like it necessarily works with the old models of a keyboard and mouse. When you have these large targets in the Metro interface, it doesn't seem to be the right thing for that. So it's that being laid atop of the desktop experience on laptops and desktops, that seems a little iffy. But I think in the long term, I really believe that they think, look, Windows 8's the way to go. That's why Windows Phone 8 is built on the same kernel, and they will get the applications. And even though people say sheer numbers, they don't have as many apps. They have tons of Facebook integration, Twitter apps. The apps that people want to use are already there. It's these like niche things, like I guess gaming. And Microsoft has gaming down. So if you can move from Windows 8 to Windows Phone 8 with some of these games, I think you're going to see. And
Xbox. Don't forget moving from Xbox to Windows.
That's right. That super popular brand that no one associates with Microsoft. Like Xbox.
But they have apps. But then you hear about, I think one of the recent numbers for both the Android and the iOS stores, iOS added like 50,000 new apps in the last couple of months. I think, since the end of April or something. And Microsoft doesn't have growth like that in their app store. So it's like if they end up alienating OEMs, well, their Surface might be the best tablet ever, but you still need that store. You need those apps because even the phone that I choose stripped down without an app store is like nothing to me.
And when you develop an app for iOS, it's elegant to develop for the iPad and the iPhone at the same time. When you develop an app for Android, it's arguably elegant to develop it for the tablet and the phone at the same time. When you develop for Windows Phone, you're not developing an app for the tablet. For the tablet, you have to develop it for either Intel-based Windows 8 or Windows RT for ARM. So they're making it a little more difficult to pick Windows as a platform for developing mobile apps.
And even if it's not more difficult, it certainly sounds confusing.
Well, I think Microsoft has made it easy.
That's the Microsoft way.
They're catering to their desktop developers, really, because going from the Windows 8 back down to mobile is a lot easier than going the other way. And because of that, that's where the strong suit is. I mean, this idea that Microsoft doesn't have apps, I guess, in their phone is fine, but for Windows, I mean, it wasn't an app store. You would just get applications and you'd go to a store and get like actual software disks in the old days, and you'd go online to get it. So the amount of applications available for Windows is just gigantic. If the developer tools, I think, are strong enough that they can leverage Windows 8 to Windows Phone 8. lot better than they could have with their current.
Now, CAD Man says apps will work on both x86 Metro and ARM Metro.
Yes.
I think he's right about that. So that it's not, maybe not as complicated as I made it sound. Leslie, I heard you giggling back there, though.
Oh, you know what? I hope they're not betting too hard on too many things. I want to see Windows 8 do well. I want to see Surface do well. But I'm hoping there's not too much of a disconnect.
I think, Paul Thurrott has used Windows 8 in his daily life for a while now, and he says you get used to it. It's not a problem. He's using the desktop just fine. It hasn't posed a lot of problems. So I think a lot of it is just getting over the hump of being used to a new thing and getting kind of Metro out of the way and not dealing with it all the time. However, that's not a compelling argument to why something is a great improvement. Windows 7 was a huge improvement because of stability, because of tightening up, and I love Windows 7. If I'm looking at Windows 8 and saying, well, I just need to get over a few annoyances and then it'll be fine, that's a less compelling proposition, I guess. Let's talk about Authentech. Apple buying Authentech, at least they're going to buy Authentech right after Authentech makes a deal with Samsung.
Yeah, SEC filing shows that Apple is planning to buy Authentech for $365 million. I think we said $356 on the news views, which is a security company you may or may not have heard of. They bring in about $77 million per year average in revenue, which is sort of break even for them. So this is not a wildly profitable company, mostly from fingerprint sensor technology. So you figure, how is that a good match for Apple? A few reasons. Most of them have to do with bring your own device, which is something that we talk about more and more these days when it comes to Apple versus Android versus RIM versus Microsoft. Who's going to win in the enterprise market where people more and more are able to bring their own devices to work and connect with the system within the enterprise. So Apple's going to buy Authentech as long as, I guess, a higher bidder doesn't come in at the last minute. I guess that's still possible. The reason is because the company has been moving into mobile security lately. And Apple is pretty bullish on the idea of the enterprise and coming across as something that's not only secure, but more secure than its rivals, particularly Android. RIM is in a very vulnerable position right now, not to say that they aren't going to turn things around, but at this point, they're on the decline in the enterprise, not on the upswing. And security is important. There's a bit of a timeline that makes Authentech pretty attractive to Apple. Back in June, ZDNet had a nice little timeline here. Authentech said that it was joining the ARM Connected community, which is a big group of ARM-based companies. All right. Earlier this month, on the 16th of July, Authentech said its VPN technology was going into Samsung's smartphone and tablets. Okay. All right. We've got VPN and Samsung's smartphones and tablets. Huge Apple competitor. Apple's paying attention. The 23rd of this month, Authentech partnered up with Alcatel-Lucent to secure both Android and Apple devices over at Portugal Telecom. Now, at this point, I see Apple saying, all right, well, they're working with Samsung. We have money. We have a lot of money, actually. We certainly have $365 million to secure a security company that's going to help us in the mobile space, but almost more importantly, keep Samsung from using the same technology.
Well, that's a big question, right?
Yeah.
Will they actually break this deal? Can they break this deal? Is it in their best interest to break this deal? Apple typically, when they acquire a company, shuts them down and has them work on Apple stuff.
Totally.
We don't see La anymore.
Or perhaps some sort of a licensing agreement, which is certainly possible. The two companies have a lot of licensing issues right now.
Yes.
So
It's not a
this
simple,
could just
it's not a
add it to
simple
the pot.
negotiation there by any stretch.
Yeah.
I do think that this is, this all makes sense from the simple point of view of Apple saying, we want to move into enterprise. We are going to move into enterprise. RIM is blowing it right now. They are the most secure choice for enterprise, but they're not pushing that. Let's take over this market. Android, for good or ill, is perceived as less secure. So let's double down on that and provide enterprise the kind of tools that they want by buying this company. Then after that comes the, what kind of deals do they have, and do we want to continue to operate this company and allow it to work with other companies? And I think that gets very interesting then.
Right, Apple bolstering its iOS platform by making it secure because people want those devices in there. And if they have IT people saying, you can't bring it in because it's not secure, we don't know we can't administer it. I mean, Apple has been moving towards the enterprise by adding things like Microsoft Exchange support. Like this wasn't a thing, I think, in the first version of iOS. There was a lot of changes to that system so that it does become more friendly, so that, yeah, you can say, I don't mind using my iPhone. Would you guys mind that? And he said no, because now it's actually secure. As for the Samsung deal, I could see them just swiping it away from Samsung and just say, we're not going to deal with you guys anymore. But I mean, don't forget, Apple and Samsung do work together. Yeah. Patent disputes aside, Samsung just does provide a lot of components to Apple. They did have a business relationship.
Chips,
they still do. So the thing is, whether they will continue to do that or not, I could see Apple being very spiteful and just killing it right now.
But it may not be because of spite. Apple might kill it just because they're like, we don't want to be in the business of running technology that we license out. PA Semi doesn't license out its designs to other people either.
But I mean, look at what Apple does with patents. Oftentimes they'll get a patent that they never intend on using, but they just want to make sure that no one else can, or they're going to make them pay up if they do use it. So I think that has to be kept in mind. Yeah,
and it's certainly, if not a purpose for them to acquire it, a happy side effect, perhaps.
Certainly, yeah.
Black Hat Conference going on in Las Vegas right now, which means your news feed is going to be filled with stories of amazing hacks and vulnerabilities. It can make you think that the world is entirely insecure and you shouldn't leave your house and you should turn off your internet sometimes. But one that caught my eye, Charlie Miller, research consultant at Accuvant, showing off an NFC hack, near-field communications. It's a little chip on your phone that allows you, when you tap or come close to another NFC reader or another NFC phone, to exchange information. He demonstrated vulnerabilities on the Nexus S running Gingerbread, the Galaxy Nexus, and the Nokia 9, and one of these was running MeeGo. Showed some memory corruption bugs in NFC under Gingerbread, which were a little disconcerting, ways to sort of use NFC to get into a phone and take control of it. More impressive to me was Android Beam. Android Beam is the way that you can exchange information from an Android phone over NFC. Android Beam forces a handset to visit any link sent to it. It must be near, so this is something where you have to be close to the target, right? But it allows you to send links to compromised websites with malware files. So I could just tap Sarah's phone and force her phone to open up a compromised website that exploits a known Android vulnerability, perhaps. Or I could send a file, like a PDF or a doc, that's poisoned to take advantage of a piece of malware, or take advantage of a vulnerability in Android. Now, you have to be running a particular version of Android. Most of these exploits were shown under Gingerbread, but that's the version of Android that most Android phones are running right now. So as a side note, it kind of points out the problem with not having a more aggressive upgrade pattern amongst Android use. But the scenarios described could be waged using things like a concealed NFC tag. He talked about a movie poster with an NFC tag on it. You could take the original NFC tag off, put up a hacked NFC tag, and anybody who comes up and uses that poster will get a website that looks like it's giving you all the movie information, but it actually is infected with malware, and it infects the phone. And then once he's owned your phone, he can send text messages, he can make calls, access your database, access your contacts list. Some of the problems he described are fixed in Ice Cream Sandwich, but not all of them, he said.
I wonder how many little codes. If you can just print out a little sticker that looks just like something up in a public place. I mean, how many of us are running our fingers
QR
over?
Codes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that. It's like QR phishing.
Mm-hmm. I wish this kind of report would explain to carriers that they should upgrade the phones when they can, as opposed to this like, okay, look, right now, every 2 years, get a new phone.
Because I think the carriers would say we do upgrade it when we can. It just takes extensive testing.
I think that would be accurate. I just wish that they would get on board and go, look, okay, if your operating system isn't secure and you need to upgrade it, you should be able to do that easily. And currently, that's not exactly the situation with a lot of Android phones, unless you get the Nexus line.
And more than that, though, Android Beam should not, by default, open anything
default,
it's sent.
Exactly. That's kind of crazy.
You basically, as far as I understand it, maybe this is wrong, Jason, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you have Android Beam on, it automatically accepts any incoming link or file. You either have to have it on or off. There's no way to say have it on, but let me approve what it gets.
See, anytime I've used it very infrequently, like that my opportunities to beam anything to or from anyone are like zero. It's maybe on the show when I'm sitting next to Eileen and All About Android. But I mean, I almost thought that it was here it is, click to accept. I was kind of surprised to see that the default was to pass it through immediately. But like I said, I've hardly used it.
That may be an ice cream sandwich behavior versus a gingerbread behavior. But either way, the worry is that, and most of these vulnerabilities, by the way, the screen has to be active. So if the screen's off and it's in your pocket, then you're a little safer. But let's say you left the screen on, it's in your pocket, somebody brushes by and they force a bad link. Now they've owned your phone and you didn't have to do anything. It's easy.
Yeah, all you have to do is
all you gotta do is have an NFC enabled
find that
phone.
one person.
You turned on Beam, so this is gonna affect like what, 6 people?
Yeah,
I know, right?
It isn't too widely worrying because of the lack of uptake of NFC, but it's good.
The ease of attacking.
It's good to hear about this stuff now before it is widely taken up, so that we can adjust to it and say, okay, you know what? First of all, the behavior of NFC should be more customized before it ever does get taken up. What are you laughing at?
I'm just thinking the Apple method would be like, this is why we don't have NFC, because it's just insecure.
Yeah, until the next version, which has NFC.
Exactly. That's what I was laughing at. So looking at your phone there.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's talk about Ouya announcing OnLive coming to the game console.
Sorry,
which I can never spell properly. But Ouya announced a partnership with OnLive, which means hundreds of games will be available at launch of Ouya, and that's coming out in March 2013.
Ouya, by the way, is a $99 game console that runs on Android.
Runs on Android,
it's
correct.
It's a Kickstarter thing.
It's a Kickstarter that would bring about 80 publishers. CNET's reporting that some titles are going to be excluded. Activision Blizzard and EA are not part of the deal. So you're
not part of the OnLive deal.
Not part of the OnLive deal on Ouya.
Okay.
So if you had regular OnLive, you'd be able to access their games. But you'll be able to play things like Arkham City on your Ouya if you wanted to buy it. And right now, let's see, what are they up to? Over $5 million in funding. They have still another 12 days to go. It's weird because we've been talking about Ouya for it seems like a long time. It's still not coming out until March. But part of this deal also allows instant demos available for up to 30 minutes for each game for free. And that was a big deal with Ouya in general, is when you try out the games, you can try them out for free. And I think OnLive's got a different system for that. Also, they showed off a revised controller. The center's got a circle touchpad, and the buttons are placeholders, colored circles. They said they won't leave out colorblind gamers, so expect like shapes or letters or something. Leslie, what do you think? What kind of impact does this OnLive move have for this console? I mean, is this just going to still be a niche device, but now they've added some serious...
I think it's far from a niche device with the amount of money they raised.
They've added some serious publishers at this point.
You guys, I have to be honest. We have a Kickstarter ban. So... We don't cover anything Kickstarter because of the rate of things not getting funded or things not happening. So I have to step out of this this one.
That's okay. We won't force you to comment on anything you're not allowed to comment on. I think that it's a huge move for Ouya, and I do think that they're already very popular. They got a lot of momentum, and this is just going to make a lot of people who are already sort of considering it now wish they had gotten in on it, because it is funded, and it's coming in March.
Yeah, one of the big concerns when I saw Ouya in the first place was, okay, a new console, it's running Android, they have all these developer-friendly ideas, but are they going to have game support? I mean, if you can have a console that's hackable, there's a lot of great things about this device when it comes out, or if it is like what they say what it's going to be like. But without games, it's not really that interesting. But this is a huge change, because the online console, the little streamer box, I think costs about $100, and it also comes with a controller. But in this case, you'll be able to have casual games and OnLive games, and that seemed, although a limited experience.
Am I imagining this, or did they already have Gaikai or somebody like that on board?
Gaikai, I don't know if they still have Gaikai, considering Sony bought them, but I'm not sure.
I don't remember. They do have their own app store, though, and they are promising that people will be easy to port their Android devices over. And they have a lot of it's interesting. They have a lot of other publishers on board to make ports of games. So it's interesting to see the big publishers not get on board with OnLive. EA stuck out to me because I feel like EA does have a deal to port some of their games over to Ouya. And maybe that's why they don't want to have their OnLive versions of the games port over.
I think sometimes when you see the big companies not participating right away, it's almost because they're like, this Kickstarter project sort of came out of nowhere. It's this concept, and now it's got millions of dollars from the public, and we don't really know how this partnership is going to be, so we'll sit the first round out and then get in later on, because obviously it would be great to have EA games as part of this. But yeah, I mean, I think it really just, it sort of justifies this whole model. A lot of time Kickstarter projects, you go, this looks really cool, but I mean, is it actually going to be a viable thing that I can get in stores within a year? And a lot of that stuff, ends up not coming to market, or things change, or there's some disappointment. And this looks like, out of the gate, it's not only an awesome console that people are excited about, but it has a bunch of titles, and you need that.
If EA is part of OnLive, why would they want someone not to play their games on a particular device? Unless they're hoping to make money in some other way on that device. And they feel like they'd be competing with themselves.
I think it's sort of the same reason you see television stations not want to get onto, set-top box devices.
They totally misunderstand how the internet works.
Or they just, they're not sure if it's somehow going to have them lose out on revenue, so they stay out of it.
Well, that's why we need someone to come in and innovate on internet and television delivery. And of course, we mentioned in the calendar yesterday that Google made their announcement about Google Fiber in Kansas City. We've had time to kind of dig into that announcement and find out what it means. They basically just got up and said, okay, here's what we're going to do, but we still don't have any hard dates yet. Google announced the plans. You're going to get 1 gigabit per second symmetrical, so up and down, 1 terabyte of cloud storage, all for $70 a month. Compare that to Verizon, which charges $205 for a third of that, 300 megabits per second down, only 65 up. You can get free internet from Google Fiber, which is only 5 down and 1 up, for 7 years if you pay the one-time $300 setup charge. Now, if you decide to sign up for the $70 a month, they'll waive the setup charge. If you want TV, you have to get internet because the television service comes over the Google Fiber internet. So there's no way to get TV without internet in this situation, but you can bundle them together for $120 a month. They'll give you a free Nexus 7 tablet to control your television. You can record 8 shows at a time on their DVR with 500 hours of storage. Lots been made of what channels are missing from the Google TV offering right now. Time Warner, Disney, News Corp, and AMC, none of them are on board yet. They haven't launched the service yet, and the word on the street is that it's not an antagonistic thing. They just haven't signed the deals yet, and they should be bringing in most of those channels by launch day. Broadband speeds have flattened out. Google's saying it wants to drive innovation. It wants to show what can be done. They will, however, only roll it out in neighborhoods where there's enough interest. So not all neighborhoods are getting it. The KansasCity.com website pointed out that you have to get 10% of the homes in your area to sign up for service. It takes a $10 deposit before Google will consider that a commitment. And your neighborhood has to meet that quota by September 9th, or you won't get the network. And it's not coming to, that's not all of Kansas City yet. That's just one swath of central Kansas City, Kansas. It will start doing this for other neighborhoods in Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri later. So it will come to both Kansas Cities, but it's starting in one neighborhood. And it gets a little complicated. It's like, okay, so I need to get my neighbors on board. How do I do that? They have Getting Fiber for Your Home in a website. You pre-register, and then that means you're joining the movement, and then you got to go rally your neighbors and get them to all sign up.
Sounds a little like a Kickstarter project.
And then there's a tree of like Google Fiber will only provide service in neighborhoods that meet their goal. If you reach your goal, then you made it. Then you get to choose your package. It's a whole little flash type animation up on their website, which takes you through, setting a date with the Google Fiber team member to come out and do the installation. So
finally enjoy it.
So, Tom, I actually have a bunch of friends in Kansas City because I went to the University of Missouri, and I talked to them all about Google Fiber yesterday. And most of them have pre-registered, but most of them have no idea when and how they're actually going to get it. I have one friend that said he figured out he needs 41 more people in his fiberhood to qualify, and so he's putting up flyers in his neighborhood so he can get people on board. But otherwise, no one else knows when they're going to get it or how.
I feel like what Google's doing here is trying to show a different way of rolling out. They're saying, look, entirely technically capable to provide 1 gigabit per second without broadband caps. When you have this amount of fiber, you don't have to put in caps. You can price it at this amount. You can make money. The impediments to companies doing this is the investment. So what they're doing is clever ways to fund the investment. They're saying, okay, instead of risking our investment by rolling it out to all of Kansas City at once and spending all this money and then hoping people sign up, we're only going to spend the money to actually roll it out in neighborhoods that will pay back the investment. And this is our weird way of ensuring that.
Not only that, but Google will have the opportunity to go, we're going to cater to our most, like, I don't know, fanatic fans. We want these people to get the stuff first because they're going to understand what's going on. If you give television over the internet to the general public and they're like, why don't I have NBC? Why don't I have this channel or that channel? Then Google has to do what it doesn't do very well, which is customer service. And I don't think they want to deal with that. And so they are limiting their rollout to the people who want it the most. And if you're willing to go through all those steps, and effectively you're evangelizing for Google by saying, hey, Tom, could you get it in this? And could you also sign up? And Sarah, could you sign up? And Leslie, could you sign up? We're all talking about it at that point. And we kind of, you might have questions that I could answer for you and be like, oh, yeah, well, Google won't have this. And effectively, they are making people into little evangelists, like what Apple used to do.
I think the cost of the rollout is a bigger concern, but that's a really good point that they're saying, okay, well, we won't have to spend as much on marketing because we get people to do it for us. That's another cost savings.
But I would love for this to be everywhere. So bring it to Petaluma.
I know. The speeds, drooling over speeds.
And I don't think Google's going to become an ISP everywhere in the country. I really think what they're trying to do is show a template to say, stop telling us you can't do it. Stop telling us you have to have bandwidth caps. Stop telling us it's not affordable for you to roll out Fios to the rest of the country. We're going to show you how to do it because it's in our best interest that people get this higher level of broadband. And they point out in their presentation that when speeds were doubling, we saw amazing innovation on the internet. We saw new business models crop up like crazy, but speeds in the United States have stalled out. We haven't seen growth in speeds over the past couple of years, and internet's been getting more expensive. Let's see, it certainly hasn't been getting cheaper.
I guess the Kansas City folks, in the lucky ones in the fiber hoods, just have to be really vocal about how much better their plans are than everyone else's in order to, for those of us who have no chance of getting these Google Fiber TV deals anytime soon, to then get angry enough so that we force the companies that are providing us to upgrade.
It's like a blood drive. You need to have that big thermometer board out. Like, we're 50% of the way to having a full fiber hood. Come on, everybody. So it's really a weird way to do it. But what it needs to happen is people need to sign up and it needs to work so Google can then say to the FCC and to Verizon and AT&T and Comcast and Time Warner, it can be done. There's a lot riding on this, actually. Let's move on to the randomizer.
Randomizer.
Are you going to get sick?
Probably.
Have you checked Twitter?
I have not checked Twitter.
Michael
What do
Riley
those two things have to do with each other?
has a story up on Gizmodo from the New Scientist that at the University of Rochester in New York, colleagues have applied the idea of data mining to Twitter data from people in New York City and found they can predict when an individual person will come down with the flu up to 8 days before they show symptoms.
I need this cross-reference with all flights. Because that's usually what I'm most frightened of getting sick. Because you're sitting in that little tin can, recirculated air, and I'm just like, I heard that guy sneeze.
No, you don't. Actually, he's saying you don't need that. All you need to do is have me look at Twitter, and I will tell you whether you're going to get sick or not.
I want to know if that guy's going to be on my flight.
No. That's too much. That's too much minuscule data. He's going to data mine.
Okay.
And he'll see who's saying they're sick, and he'll look at the connections, and what was it? 94% accuracy, I think.
So many people have word
I
name
don't know.
tags.
90%
You're
accuracy.
depending on people complaining about feeling sick
It works.
on Twitter. It does.
You can come up with all kinds of like, I need to know where this person is or that person is, and depending on people complaining, but he's done it.
I still feel like there's a large segment of the population, some of them actually work with us here at TWiT, who come to work because they don't want to take time off and they're sick. And they don't say anything about it because they want to get paid. I'm not actually looking at you specifically, Jason. I'm just talking in generalities. Okay. But this is not a perfect science.
No, it is very good science. May not be perfect, but it's 90%. 90% good enough for you?
That's pretty good.
I don't know. That's an A-. You can do better.
Leslie, you're going to avoid all of New York City because you know that certain people are sick in neighborhoods?
That is not what this is.
I'm a blogger, so I never go outside.
And he knows that based on the Twitter data. That's what I'm saying. You're trying to have too much fine control.
They can predict like where I'm going to be on whatever day. I mean, they can use your cell data, your Twitter data to predict a lot scarier things. So I believe this.
Yeah, what about all the people who just feel so sick? They've got such a bad flu that they're like, ugh, Twitter sounds like the worst thing right now. Definitely not.
Apparently, that doesn't affect the data that much. It happens. And people say, I'm sick of all of this politics. And they control for that. They don't count those types of posts. They only talk about
like a hypochondriac filter.
No, but those are
what if you say
outliers
something
in the
like,
data.
I've got a hurt in my head.
I don't. You can.
Am I in that 90%?
You got a what if all day. 90%. 90% of it works. And not 90% of the people post that they're sick. He's saying 90% of the time we can predict within 8 days ahead of time when you're going to get sick.
So Twitter should be up all the time. That's the.
Yeah, really. No more fail whales.
Yeah, none
we
of
need
that.
to
That
know.
thing yesterday for an hour.
It's for our public health.
We need to know when to take extra zinc.
Yeah.
Okay.
We only got one thing on the calendar, but let's look at it.
It's a good one. On Saturday the 28th, that's tomorrow, the larger Nintendo 3DS XL is coming to both Japanese and European consumers. Those of us in the U.S. Will have to wait until August 9th. That's it, Tom. Nothing else is happening.
Well, let's get to the incoming stuff.
Right.
Incoming message.
We have a voicemail from JC who has taken a stab at explaining Sprint's strategy.
AT&T. JC from Texas. I personally am an AT&T customer, but my company uses Sprint, and I also am a representative for the company. I travel all over state Texas. Sprint is by far the best carrier in this state. It works everywhere. My AT&T barely works anywhere. And recently I called them to do some upgrades on some phones, and man, they're just falling over themselves to phone customer service. They call me back every day. Are you satisfied? I mean, they're just really doing an amazing job. So don't count Sprint out yet.
Well, that's good because they know you control a bunch of accounts for a big company. I don't know if they're going to do that for every single individual, but that's good to hear.
But you usually, I find, this is probably not always true, but that a lot of the times the struggling companies have the best customer service because they have so much riding on the fact that sometimes customer service will make or break a relationship that I have with a company.
Yeah.
And when you're the big guy, you just have you have less to lose.
We're the best, so you're going
Right.
to choose us. Yeah.
I like this wild, crazy strategy of being nice to your customers.
Yeah,
It's a
right?
crazy idea. You might actually win more people over. Zappos did this for a while, and that's why Amazon bought them. It was like they did it really well. And so maybe that's Sprint strategy. Just be nice, and somebody will buy you.
Michael wrote into TNT at twit.tv, said, thanks to you all for keeping me so well informed. You're welcome. I'm glad we work for you. He's a manager at Radio Shack, and he says, it makes my job a lot easier. In reference to Thursday's show, the amount of Roku sold among other similar devices just keeps going up. The shift is gaining momentum. The amount of people dropping cable is amazing. I am glad to hear Roku seems to be investing in making it a better experience. Would love for the cable companies to understand that things need to change. Cut the cord. Shout out to Sarah Lane. Been a fan since the beginning.
Aww. The beginning of my life?
Yeah.
Glad to have you on board.
Exactly.
It's a long
time fan. But anecdotal evidence, but pretty good, cool evidence, especially coming from a place like Radio Shack. It's pretty mainstream. You're going to get all walks of life coming in there. It's not like Fry's or something that's early adopters all the time.
Got another email from Jacob Loeb who says, hey, TNT peeps, I wanted to drop a quick note to back up that other viewers report that FaceTime was working on 4G. He says, I was on an overnight project in one of my stores reworking the network. My daughter called in on FaceTime. She was saying goodnight. I told her that the call was about to drop out. I was actively removing the old router, but I'd call her back after the call dropped. Long after I was holding this unpowered store router in my hands, our FaceTime conversation was still going. I put the iPhone in the patch rack, supported by the network cable, continuing to work, listening to my daughter. Jacob he believes that FaceTime calls, as long as they start on Wi-Fi, might be able to continue on the cell network as long as the network status check was made at the start of the call. He says, we all know it's not a technical issue preventing FaceTime calls on cell phone networks. It's just the network operator's choice.
Unless he was on a different Wi-Fi network than he thought.
Yeah.
It's like a Twilight Zone episode. The call is still continuing.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
The router's coming from inside.
Why are you changing the router while you're in the middle of a call with your daughter, too? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't want to even speculate on that. Mark Mondoy wanted to give us an idea about the future. The Kinect-style Minority Report waving of the hands isn't the future of interface over touch. It's inefficient and difficult to learn. How about an interface style that virtually every human being has learned since they were children? Let me explain. Touch the tip of your index finger to your thumb. Now rub it around as though one finger was the pointer, the other the touchpad. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the future of human-to-computer interface. I dub the booger.
Why the booger?
Apologies for the crassness of the title. I couldn't think of a better analogy for the interaction.
Ew.
This style, however, assumes the need of a pointer as in a desktop. Looking further into the future, the pointer instead would be integrated into your vision, so you only need to look at what you wish to click on and touch your fingers together for confirmation. Middle click, middle finger.
Hey.
How is that worse than what we have now?
You know, I read a story today, too, about a guy who has figured out how to move a cursor around with his eye movements, like pinpoint control. So he may not be far off there, but that is interesting.
How many people listened to you reading that email where you're sitting here going,
Oh, yeah, we all were. Leslie, were you sitting there doing that?
Yeah, I was, but I was grossed out.
Well, as soon as he called it, let's call it something else. Come up with better marketing, Mark.
Yeah.
But we like the name. All right, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Don't forget you can submit stories for our consideration at our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com. We look at that every day to decide what stories we might want to cover on the show. So get in there and submit stories and vote. And big thanks to the mods in there that keep it very useful for us to look at every day. Also, good news, if you want to see us in high definition, I don't know why you would, but maybe you just like having high definition things. The HD feeds are live. You can subscribe at twit.tv/TNT.
Way to sell it.
I know. I'm like, don't.
Why would you want to do that?
I don't want to have to start putting makeup on.
Yeah. I just want to
beard.
read the books behind you.
High definition beard. Yeah, if you want to be able to read the titles or see what the keys are.
We want to provide that service.
All of
All
that's
the Easter
there
eggs
for you.
behind us.
Twit.tv/TNT. So we still have the small and large video feeds separately. So you
absolutely.
it's a
This is
new
the
feed
third
that's
additional HD feed if you want to subscribe to it.
And of course, TNT at twit.tv if you want to send us best of moments every week. Just put the subject line best of. Leslie, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you along.
Thanks for having me. I always have a good time with you guys.
Let folks know where they can find what you do online.
Gizmodo.com, of course. And you can follow me on Twitter at LesHorn.
That's LESHORN. Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We will be found on the web at the same place we always are. It's where you can find that HD feed subscription link, twit.tv/TNT. You can email us. Our email address, like I just said, is TNT@twit.tv, and you can give us a call. Leave us a voicemail. Please do. Keep it around 30 seconds. Iyaz may even let it on the show. 260-TNT-SHOW is the phone number. We'll be back Monday with Dwight Silverman. I'm glad we have a time that works for him. We'll see you then.